everyone. Welcome back to Lady Probs. Brittany and I are here wearing our political vote t-shirts, so you know what that means. Today's episode is Women in Politics.
Oh, yeah. And if you're joining us for the very first time this episode, we are Brittany and Kaylee Winfield, and we are siblings who are starting a podcast that is talking about women and all of the issues that women deal with on a day-to-day basis, whether it be sexuality, body image, wage gaps,
You name it.
representation in media. And today we're talking about women in politics, or the lack thereof. So to start us off, I have a few statistics that I'd like to share with the group. So as of 2019, only 25% of the Senate was women. 23% of the House of Representatives were held by, the seats were held by women, and only 22% of all United States mayors of cities that had populations of over 30,000 were women. And to make that even worse, out of those three categories individually, 37% of those already low percentages were women of color, which means women of color are drastically underrepresented in all areas of government, whether it be national, federal, local government.
You really see that problem, like you said, whether it's national government or your local government, across the board, there isn't enough representation for females, for LGBTQ, for people of color, which is insane because those voices do matter. Like, how did we get to a point where our country was founded on a lack of not being represented, and now all of a sudden, like, we're repeating that history again?
Yeah, well, it's the lack of want to change. It baffles me the fact that there are humans running around saying these people fighting for equal rights are trying to change the foundation of America and what America was found on and what we should be prideful for. And yet here we are in the year 2020, and out of 193 countries that were surveyed around the world, United States is number 75 for the count of women in government, which means we're not even in the top 60%.
That's insane.
It's horrible. It's how will we ever get our voices heard if there's not change made?
I think the thing that makes me most distraught is that watching AOC fight for women's justice, women's rights, and not being taken seriously by her colleagues. You know, these people were voted in as role models, as representatives of citizens of the United States. And if they're treating other women poorly in government, like, what does that say?
Yeah. And, a few weeks ago, AOC took the floor to talk about the two legislators that called her a bitch in front of the steps of the Capitol.
Yeah, I shared that on Facebook.
It was, how do you look your mother, your daughters, your aunts, your sisters in the eye after saying that to any woman? Any woman. It's just, the mentality nowadays.
And I think that people look at AOC and say, oh, well, she was being overly aggressive. Well, think about the flip side. Would you say that to a male?
Nope.
Doing their job? Would you say that to your manager? That's why it's the equivalent of when men tell women to smile on the street. Oh, it's innocent, you know? But you wouldn't go up to a male and tell him to smile on the street.
Yep. And to that point, my next statistic, I was looking at the Pew Research Center, and they decided to do some research on social trends, which, with the involvement of social media, as we know, have changed, whether it be TV, whether it be radio, whether it be social media, Twitter specifically. It's changed the face of any election. It's
true.
It's crazy to think how much damage the internet can do, and how, on the flip side, how much good the internet can do. But so getting back to the survey, they decided to study different attributes and characteristics that should be looked for in a presidential candidate.
Mm-hmm.
All of the characteristics that were reported on showed that it would be in a male's favor to have that characteristic over a woman, except for the characteristic of being more approachable, being more compassionate. The last one, and the one with the biggest respondent gap,
I'm so scared.
being physically attracted. Being physically attractive.
Why?
And basically having a pretty face. So it would help women more if they had a pretty face, basically, is what that survey was saying.
Wow. That's like kind of crazy. Like, no wonder women have like unrealistic beauty standards, you know what I mean? Or like don't think their body's worth it, you know?
And, you know, these women that have been running for recent elections, they're not horrible to look at. Like, so what else would you like from them? And on your point from before, you could say that AOC was being aggressive, but that survey on the flip side said that being more aggressive
was a positive thing.
Won't help women as much as being aggressive will help men.
Yeah.
So you expect men to be aggressive to help their campaign, but women not to be aggressive. But then on the flip side, being emotional only got an 8% survey response. Mm-hmm. So being more emotional only helps women 8% rather than not being aggressive.
And where did this link between being emotional and women connect? You know, men are, you could say that men's anger is just as emotional as women's passion.
Exactly. And I was on TikTok the other night, and this guy posted about the first presidential debate that we saw, and he goes, I never in my life ever again want to hear anybody say that a woman is too over emotional to be president. Because after what we witnessed between Donald Trump and Joe Biden on the first presidential election debate of 2020, never again. Never. I learned nothing. It's supposed to be an educational resource in order to make an educated and well-informed decision before going into the polls.
No.
Nope.
And that's the problem too, is that we love to judge our candidates based on popularity and not their academics, their careers, their resume, really.
Their actual successes.
And that starts all the way in high school.
Yeah.
Kids don't take their president who's planning their prom seriously. It's really, so the debate is for a last minute, let's see who might have the issues that I care about the most.
And who has the face? Who can tolerate the other person more?
Yeah.
Like, that's what it came down to.
And people are focused more on what tie Joe Biden is wearing versus Trump than what's actually coming out of their mouth.
Yeah. It was an absolute... It was an absolute shit show. Like, that's what that was the best I can describe it.
I heard someone on the news call it a dumpster fire.
It was a trash dumpster fire. That's exactly. I watched, so we were watching, and afterwards, George Stephanopoulos, who anybody who's older than me has known George on the news for over 40 years now. He has been the face of nightly news. He goes, dead ass, looks right into the camera and says, "That was the worst debate I've ever witnessed in my life." It was so funny, but so heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah.
Fact that other countries are now making fun of us because of how our political system is crumbling.
Okay, and speaking of other countries too, obviously coronavirus has affected this whole thing, has put a wrench in the political system in America right now. But looking at the statistics, women who were running countries have lower coronavirus numbers than leaders that were male. Coincidence?
I think
I don't
not.
know. I don't know.
I
Let's
would
think
be
about
curious
that.
to see, as you said, like the background too, like the background of individuals, because I don't really trust a businessman to lead us through a pandemic. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's just when individuals form cabinets and form committees, it has to be a well-rounded, and that's exactly what we're missing. We're missing the diversity in government it takes to make a well-informed decision and pass laws that benefit everybody, whether it's a cis white male, whether it's a cis white female, whether it's a Native American family, whether it's an African American family. There are disparities up and down in every which way, and we need that representation of the people who are going to suffer the most. Or else they are just going to keep suffering, and the gap is just going to get deeper and deeper until it just blows up in everybody's faces. And, you know, everybody likes to mention the economy. Well, there is no economy without the, you know, everybody being represented in all those statistics. You can't really understand the wealth of a nation and make ripple effect decisions if the top 1% is, you know, is the most represented in those numbers. It's just, you can't.
There's people out there who talk about how this is the time for change right now. And, you know, with every election, everyone always says that. Like, this is the time for change. How many presidents have we had? 42, 43?
45.
45? I'm so sorry, everyone. Please don't judge me. I'm an art major. 45 presidents. All male. Mostly white. Only Obama has our representation in there. But if you really want change, why don't we shake it up a little bit, America?
Yeah.
Let's nominate a woman president and see how that goes. Let's nominate an LGBTQ person. Let's nominate a person of color.
Yeah. And in my research, the statistic I found the funniest, and I should have included it, which now I am, is they looked at both Democrats and Republicans. So party does not matter, because I know somebody's going to point that out. Of the respondents, 38%, I believe, it was somewhere in the high 30s, 38% said they wouldn't mind seeing a woman president in their lifetime. Well, guess what?
Where?
Guess what? You have to actually vote a woman in order to see that in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Step it up. And I'm talking to you, younger generation, you're going to be suffering with the consequences.
Just because you legally can't vote doesn't mean you can't be informed on what's going on in the government right now. Because guess what? You're the next batter up.
Yep, exactly. And you said it right. And, you know, this goes for local government. This goes for state government. And then it goes all the way up to federal government with the election of the president coming up. So,
and it's whether you don't know who to vote on, just vote.
Yeah.
If you, I don't know, you just try your best to get out there and vote, because guess what? People literally fought for you to have this right.
Exactly. And
we're lucky enough to live in a country where democracy rules.
Yeah.
So participate it, and don't complain that your voice isn't heard when voting is your voice.
Yeah. And we're not just saying obviously we're part of the Democratic Party. There's no secret there.
Yeah.
But I tell individuals, I do not care if you're Republican and on the more conservative side, or if you're a Democrat and you're a liberal or, you know, even
moderate,
a socialist.
Yeah.
As long as your decision comes with the education behind it, as long as if I ask you, why are you voting for, say, name here, and you could say, here's a list of reasons why I'm voting for this person,
go for it.
I'm good.
Please.
It's where individuals, you know, the loudest ones get on the internet, the loudest ones get on TV, and they say, oh,
the wealthiest ones
get on TV and they say, oh, I liked them because their street sign looked good. Like, no,
Yeah.
that's not a legitimate reason.
They hired a great graphic designer.
Yeah, like, I
Yeah.
like them because my friend Jim said they're good. Okay, great, but, like, you're not Jim, so what is this person going to do for you and your family and your needs for the next couple years? Like,
Yeah.
it's this, anybody that you put in government, wherever on the chain, they're going to be passing laws that affect you directly. And, you know, I think back to, I believe it was 2 years ago when Alabama was voting on the abortion ban.
Mm-hmm.
Out of 35 senators, 4 of them were women. 4 out of 35. That's how
How?
well, we know how. Why is anybody that cannot go through that
Making decisions on it?
making decisions that will affect rape victims, that will affect unplanned pregnancies, that
Mhm.
affect emergency abortions? Like,
Yeah.
people wake up, abortions are not just, you know, they're just not, like, delivered out on the street. Like, sometimes it's a legitimate medical reason.
And people just think that a woman gets pregnant because she's slutty, and then she wakes up
I
one
hate
day and says, I'm going to get an abortion. I don't think that's how that
No.
works.
No.
We, as humans, have such an emotional response to human rights and death that this is a big decision for someone to go through.
Yeah.
And whether someone does it or not, it's up to them, really. It's up to them. It's up to their family unit, but really it's up to them.
Yeah, they're going to be the ones that have to carry the weight, the emotional weight, the physical weight. It should be pro-choice, like, and there should be no reason why an Alabama legislator is making that decision for you.
Yeah.
Particularly a man who doesn't know you personally, doesn't know your story, doesn't know your background, doesn't know the reason why, doesn't know what you've gone through. They should not be making that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
On your reproductive health.
yeah, it's very unfortunate. And, you know, there have only been 44 female governors ever.
Yeah.
Ever. We've been a country for how long?
Yeah.
Ever.
Long enough.
Long enough. Like, it's
And
just...
Speaking of, too, I want to bring it back to somewhere else, mention this, but when Hillary Clinton was running against Trump for the first time, I definitely talked to women who wanted to vote for Hillary just because she was a woman. And then I talked to women who wanted to vote for Hillary because she was a Democrat, and others who didn't want to vote for her because they didn't want her to be the first woman president. So it's like going, like, obviously right now there's 2 males running for president, but in future elections, how do we as women decide how we're going to vote, or if we're going to vote for a woman, even if they don't show the same views that we show?
Yeah. We're going to actually talk about the Hillary and Donald Trump election, the 2016 election, after the break coming up very soon. Before we step there, though, I just want to mention one more kind of surprising fact that, did you know that we as women did not have the right to get a bank loan by ourselves until 1974?
Thanks, RGB.
Yeah, as somebody who's looking into buying their first home, specifically somebody who's not putting in a joint application, the fact that you need any man, like literally any man, to co-sign, it doesn't even need to be a related man, in order
Ridiculous.
to get a
Like,
bank loan, in
it's
order
my
to get
money. I
any
worked for
credit,
it.
any credit whatsoever. Like, that means you can't start a business. That means you can't buy a car. That means you can't
Like,
buy a
are
home.
women so dainty and helpless that, like, this is what it's come to?
Apparently, we can't prepare a budget. Like, it just doesn't work. I don't even know what money is. But I just wanted to mention that because that was my last surprising fact before we cut to a little break. And then when we come back, we are going to talk about the 2016 election and then the 2018 midterm election and then what politics is going to look like moving forward.
For the future.
Woohoo.
Cool. We'll see you then.
And now we're back, and we're going to be talking about the most recent elections and the one that is coming up on November 3rd, 2020, between Donnie T and Joe B.
Oh, gosh.
But before, we're going to rewind it a little bit. We're going to rewind it 4 years ago when Hillary beat Bernie Sanders for the Democratic nomination between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Obviously, there were a lot of tensions back in the day. There's still tension now. Most recently in May, Donald Trump is still calling women very derogatory terms. And it's just so unfortunate to see that is the road that has to go down just to make him feel masculine. Like, that is the definition of toxic masculinity right there. I mean, we talk about the 2016 election and the debate in particular where Donald Trump called Hillary the devil and also was, chanting to his loyal followers to lock her up. He's still insistent on that. Just today, actually, he continued that conversation and still believes that Hillary should be locked up in jail, whereas Breonna Taylor's killers still no word on that.
The thing that fascinates me is that during that election, I remember people commented more on what Bill Clinton was doing than what Hillary was doing for the community.
Yep. That reminds me of like Parks and Rec when it's like they were yelling at Ben Wyatt like he for he, like male for he. Like, oh my God, it was so stupid. Like, nobody asked him what he's doing. Like, it was all about shifted to the other spouse. Like, why does that matter? You should be focusing on the candidate that's in front of you.
At hand, yeah.
Especially Hillary Clinton, who has been in the White House and involved with politics
for a long time.
Longer than most. You know, she had the experience that I think was needed to continue on. And, to the point about like what he had tweeted back in May, he had been sharing different tweets coming from different Republican supporters calling Hillary a skank. He called Nancy Pelosi, told her to shut her mouth with tape. And then the most disturbing one of all, in my opinion, Stacey Abrams, who is a Black House of Representatives member in Georgia, called her Shamu. Yeah, your face just dropped.
Oof.
Yeah. How disgusting do you need to be? And have you looked in a mirror lately? That's what I want to know.
Do you own a mirror?
Do you own a mirror in the White House? Why do you need to stoop to that level? It's because you have nothing else to say. You literally have blank bullets coming out of your mouth because nothing educational is coming out of there.
I am so proud of these women in government who take this abuse day and day and day after day. And they elegantly just go about their business.
Yeah.
They don't stoop to that level because they know that they're fighting for something bigger than right now.
Exactly. And, no matter who the woman candidate is, nobody deserves that kind of abuse.
No.
Like, no woman, no human does. Like, nobody deserves to be taken less seriously because you think they don't look the part.
It's one thing to fight them on their politics. It's another thing to fight them because of their sexuality, because of their gender, because of what shoes they're wearing that day. You know what I mean? It's insane. We keep saying it's insane because I think we're just sitting here speechless, just overwhelmed with, I don't even know overwhelmed with fear.
It's a very emotional subject and something that I'm passionate for. It's just, how do you put into words how screwed we are? Like, if change doesn't happen. And speaking of change, I do want to speak about the 2018 election for those who were like, well, that's not a presidential year. Yeah, no, it's a midterm election, which is just as important. I am a firm believer that everybody should be involved in every election that happens, not just the presidential election.
Yeah.
Because lawmaking and changes happen up and down the tier, whether it's in your local government, whether it's with your school board, whether it's, for the president. Every decision that you make, it's a voice that's representing yourself, as long as you are coming in with an educated decision.
Mm-hmm.
So on that point, we had in 2018, we had 90 women elected to Congress, which was a record-breaking year.
Snaps.
There you go. And in that whole pool of women, we had several names in particular. Obviously, we all know Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, otherwise known as. She is just a powerhouse, an absolute powerhouse in Congress. She was the youngest woman to be elected to Congress and ended up beating 10-term Joe Crowley from Brooklyn, which, if you don't know who Joe Crowley is, he is very good friends with Donald Trump. So,
and I'm really excited because what I've seen on the interwebs is that people are really looking forward to when it's AOC's chance to run for president. I think people are really getting...
She only has 6 more years. Not that I'm counting, but she only has 6 more years. Yeah.
And that brings me back to my question before, is that when Hillary was running for potentially being the first woman president in our history of America, a lot of women that I was talking to didn't want to vote for her just because she was a woman. They wanted to vote for her because they stood for what they believed in. And some of that didn't align.
Yeah.
Where I feel like if in future elections we do see a candidate like AOC, are we going to vote for her just because she's a woman, or are we going to vote for her because of her politics?
I would vote for her because I freaking love her, and she's just everything. She's just everything that the millennial population should be looking up to.
Mm-hmm.
She is powerful. She's aggressive, but she knows what she wants.
Also, her suits are amazing.
Yeah. Exactly. She fights. She knows what it's like to be a hard-working middle-class American.
Mm-hmm.
If you want the true definition of an American, it's somebody who is hardworking, somebody who's passionate, somebody who shows up for their community, somebody that gives no Fs. Like, she is just amazing. And going back to my previous comment, the fact that she had to take the Congress floor and speak against Representative from Florida, the Republican Representative Ted Yoho, more like Yahoo, who in their right mind, if you don't know who I'm talking about, he was the person who called her a fucking bitch in front of media at the front steps of the Capitol. Anywhere else, that would be terms for firing. Like, if I said that to my CEO, guess what? I'm canned the next day. Like, it's just, who gets away with that in the political climate, especially? Like, things need to change. So going back to other powerhouses, in 2018, we elected Kyrsten Sinema, who is the first bisexual and female senator in Arizona, and also Sharice Davids, who was the first Native American female elected to Congress, and also beat out a long-term standing individual, Kevin Yoder, who had been serving for 4 years, a 4-term seat. So the fact that these women are coming in and they're beating men that have been long-standing in government, that is even more of a reason to praise them.
Yeah.
That means you're doing something right. And, that's all I really have on this segment. But the last thing I want to comment on is, if you haven't already, if you have a Netflix subscription, I highly, highly, highly recommend you watch the documentary Knock Down the House. Yes, it's a documentary. Yes, they're my favorite. Judge me all you want. But if you have an extra 90 minutes, actually, I don't even think it's 90 minutes. I think it's like 85 minutes. If you have an extra hour and a half in your life, highly recommend. It profiles, not only does it profile AOC, but it profiles the other women that ran that same year during the midterm election. And the other women, unfortunately, lost. But there's one quote that AOC says that always sticks in my mind. She ends up calling one of the other women who was running that year who just found out that she lost. And over the phone, AOC goes, yes, it sucks that all these other women lost, but think about it. If you didn't run, there's a good chance that I wouldn't have. If you didn't run, there's a good chance I wouldn't have won.
Yeah.
Which means, unfortunately, the more women that you have in this candidate pool, the more chances that more seats will be occupied by women and more women will be elected.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you decide not to run. It's when you decide not to get involved. It's when you decide not to vote. That's when the diversity and the representation goes away. Because,
And these women who hold these spots in government, strong people like AOC, they're truly role models for the 9-year-old girl to be strong and capable and see a woman standing in a position like that. So it definitely, it goes past politics. It goes to empowering women, really.
It goes to empowering women, being that leader that anybody can look up to.
Yeah.
Whether it be a 9-year-old girl, whether it be a 65-year-old woman who's still fighting for LGBTQIA rights. Like, it's just, it would be great to see us moving forward. And unfortunately, I personally feel that we've moved backwards in the past 4 years a little bit, but we just need to elect people that, represent us, and the people that have those good thoughts and good intentions and intentions in mind. We outnumber the evil. It's when we decide to stay at home on election day, that's when evil wins.
And speaking of people who have great intentions for us and our fantastic representation, on our next segment, we have a special guest. Their name are Taylor Small.
And Taylor is going to talk to us a little bit about, the campaign that she just ran. And it's a historical campaign for Vermont. She is the first openly transgender female in government in Vermont. It was a historical race that won against somebody who is a longstanding citizen of Winooski, and I just think it's amazing to get to hear somebody who I've always befriended. I mean, I've known Taylor for almost 10 years now, so it's amazing to see the things that she's done from our college years up until now. If you don't know who Taylor is, Taylor is known for many things, wears many hats. So not only is she a director of health at Spectrum, which serves LGBTQIA youth in Vermont, also has a drag persona named Nikki Champagne and does story time at different libraries in Vermont. So there's that public speaking that I don't have, clearly. There's that public speaking.
We're working on it.
That experience. And I just think that Taylor has so many good ideas, including supporting the Green New Deal, which AOC also represents and supports. Same with Bernie Sanders.
Making a bigger minimum wage. They're very focused on mental health and healthcare as a whole.
And changing the curriculum standards in Vermont. It's no secret that even our children are being marginalized based on race and based on gender and based on socioeconomic standards. Like, kids are not getting the same education. So the fact that Taylor has that in her initiatives and is moving forward to making new laws in Vermont that are going to support those issues, I think it's amazing. So,
please stick around, and if you so please, hit that like button, subscribe, leave us a comment, anything you want. But we'll see you soon.
do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and the campaign you just ran?
Yeah, so my name's Taylor Small. I am the director of the Health and Wellness Program over at Pride Center of Vermont. And just during this time of COVID, also decided to run for state legislature here in the state of Vermont, going to represent Chittenden 6-7. So the district is all of the city of Winooski, and then what I am trying to brand as the river sliver of Burlington. It's literally just like this little, tiny little piece of land, has like a few hundred folks over there. But they're still part of the district right now. We can talk about districting a whole other time because that is coming up this year. But the, I guess, historic piece about the run is that I'm set to become Vermont's first out transgender legislator coming in 2020. And also nationwide, I'm set to become the fifth state legislator out trans. It's mind-blowing that it took this long for that to happen.
It's amazing, though.
Yeah, that's really
absolutely.
exciting. Yeah. What are some of the main issues you're passionate right now?
Great question. So some of the things that are most important to me, first and foremost, is healthcare. In my role right now at the Pride Center, it's really working both with the community and the Department of Health and making sure that folks are able to have equitable access to healthcare. And my hope is to move Vermont in the direction of a single payer healthcare system. I mean, we hear Bernie talking about this on the national scale. I think we can model it right here in the state of Vermont. And I think it's time for it. One thing that I hold, especially during the pandemic, is that folks shouldn't be losing health insurance when they're losing a job. Like, how devastating is that to know that we have had over, I think it's like 200,000 folks died during this, and also even more, millions of folks losing their jobs, which also means losing health insurance. So that's one big piece that I hold, as well as climate justice. We only have so much longer on this earth if we let corporations control with fossil fuels and oil and really damaging our ecosystem. And again, Vermont can be a leader in all of these pieces. So those are my top two that I'm really focused on.
Oh, yeah. And on climate change, you do support the Green New Deal, correct?
Oh, heck yeah. Also, have you seen the posters that AOC put out?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome. Why did you decide to run?
Great question. I can say that going into this, it was just in March that all of this happened. And it was just a couple months later that I received a call from Representative Deanna Gonzalez. So she currently holds a seat here in Winooski and has been for the past 6 years, and was actually the first out queer woman of color that served in the state legislature. So big shoes that I'm trying to fill here. And she gave me a call. It was a week before the filing date, and asked if that would be something I would be interested in. And at first I was like, no, I got other stuff going on. and then thought about it and talked to my family and decided that, if not now, when, and if not me, then who? So, and then jumped in head first and put a campaign together in 36 hours. Thank goodness for being a millennial and knowing tech stuff. I think that has been like a saving grace in all of this, since COVID is such a weird time to try to do campaigning.
And I think your social media campaign, it's amazing between the design. It's just it's very modern. And I think it's so eye-catching that why wouldn't you, put together this great campaign? You have like such a great design behind it as well.
Heck yeah. Oh, I'm really grateful. I have had my best friend help me through all of this, and they're also my campaign manager. So shout out to Justin Marsh. Thank you.
What about your background and experience will help you with this new role?
Yeah, such a great question. And I think a big piece of my role is doing this advocacy work within systems that already exist and making sure that we are making all of these services accessible. And so working with the Department of Health also means working with our healthcare system and delivering trainings to healthcare providers, It means talking to folks and letting them know that we need to update our Medicare and make sure that it is at level coverage to all of the private insurance that we offer. I think it's so weird that our state doesn't offer the same insurance as private corporations, which is why if we just moved to the system, then it would all be the same and people would have wonderful coverage. And one of those pieces is really updating coverage for trans folks. So in the Medicare ruling before it, there were a lot of barriers to folks getting that gender affirming care that they need. One of the most outrageous ones that stood out to me was for women who wanted breast augmentation, they would have to take a picture of their chest and send it to a committee at Medicare that would then review said photo to see whether or not they deemed their chest had enough breast development for a breast augmentation surgery.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
And who do you think's on that committee? That's like
white men. We know
yeah.
that. And so this would have passed. Like they wrote this into the rule and they were like, okay, that seems about right to me. But when you don't have representation at the table saying, no, this isn't okay. Like, let me read this back to you and tell you how in violation that is of our bodies.
Very invasive.
Oh, terrible. And so I think that's the big piece when we're thinking about moving into the legislative arena is making sure that we have representation there that's actually focusing on those most impacted and not just maintaining the systems of power that exist.
Yeah.
So who are you inspired by in Congress right now?
Oh, such a great question. I think, of course, I can't help but focus on the squad. AOC is like a dream, but I would love to focus locally and really say Keisha Ram has been a huge leader for me. So she ran for state legislature back in, oh my goodness, 2012, 2010, a time. She ran for state legislature and won. She was 21 years old, serving in the state legislature right after UVM. Shout out to UVM. And she served for 8 years, ran for lieutenant governor, was not able to secure that position, but is running again this year to become Vermont's first woman of color to serve in our state Senate. And it's her persistence and also being a young person in the legislature, something that we do not see all that often, was just inspiring to me. And also she was second or third person that I called in deciding whether or not to run, because I knew that she would tell me the truth and saying like, is it really worth it? Is going into this arena, knowing that it's going to be full of fights, knowing that it's like pushing up against views that are not yours. And she was like, yes, 100%. I don't know what else to tell you, but just say yes to this. Like, you should do it. And so she is just amazing.
Fantastic. And on that, what advice would you give to the younger generation or anybody who's looking for, advice on this topic?
Oh, do it. If you're thinking about doing it, do it. And you can start at your local level. I mean, thinking of youngest folks out there, a majority of school boards have a youth representation on there, or they should. So advocate for that first and foremost. They are the deciding body as to the policies for your school. So you should have a voice in the mix. So starting in that arena, and then also understanding that if you have the goal of serving in the state legislature, then do it. I think what has been also really inspiring during this run is having one of my youngest cousins call me and say, okay, so I'm thinking of running for state legislature in Maine. I'm 19 years old, which means if I run in 2 years, then I'll be 21 and I'll be able to serve at that time. And I was like, I cannot imagine at 18 deciding to go into the legislature, 19 going into the legislature, but that is like the tenacity that we need because things are moving at such a slow pace right now. And it's because it's not affecting the people who are serving in the legislature. Who do we see there right now? It's a bunch of white, older men who have a whole bunch of wealth and they're looking to maintain it. And until we change who's reflected in the legislature, we're not actually going to see change either within our state or even nationwide. So if you're thinking about it, just do it and ask your friends for help. They're going to be there for you.
Oh yeah, it's so important. Like, as you say, no matter if it's your local school board or running for president, what do you have to lose?
And it does make a difference.
Oh yeah.
It absolutely does. Like, all of those places are places where you can make change.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So is there anywhere we can find more information on the issues that are going on in your campaign?
Totally. You can go to taylorsmallvt.com for more information, or follow me on social media. It's Taylor Small VT on just about everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Taylor. Is there anything else that you would like to tell the viewers?
I mean, keep listening to this podcast, of course. I'm really grateful that y'all asked me to be on. Just keep doing this and keep having these important conversations. I can't wait to see what else comes out.
Thank you so much. And to our viewers, please, please, please vote. Please. No matter how you do it, just make sure your vote is counted.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Taylor. I hope you have a great night, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Sounds good, y'all. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Taylor.